agents, we all talk and cross-pollinate and find out. So anyway, find out about that. Okay, so let's talk about the buyer representation agreements. Okay, so remember, it's an obligation between the buyer and you. You is the agent of South Bay Brokers. Now, at South Bay Brokers, we require the non-threatening BRNN, the buyer realtor not for compensation and you know, non-binding type thing. But you know, you need to use it, that one, for every single person that you're going to deal with at South Bay Brokers. I also, at the same time, when I present the BRN, I give them the idea that there is another contract out there that we could be using. And I talk about why we might be using it, but I don't go right to it. But in the meantime, when I'm trying to explain BRNN, I'm also telling them that, you know, if you want me to go see the for sale by owners for you, if you want me to talk to builders for you, if you want me to canvass a neighborhood where there's things that are not on the MLS for you, I'm going to need to be compensated. And I explain to them a little bit about my business. Now, what is the perception of most people about real estate agents? We are all what?
Rich.
Rich, famous, we have nothing to worry about, right? Things like that. The truth of the matter is,
Sell a gazillion strand listing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, that, you know, and that's, I mean, I love the beach reporter thing. You know, everybody's selling strand houses. Well, how many sales? I mean, if every single strand house sold, how many houses would sell? You know, I mean, it's, this perception thing is really, really difficult. So what I do is I explain to them, here's my business plan. Number one, I need to get paid. Bottom line, okay? And I tell them that if there was a builder in this area at one time that was offering on new construction $500 compensation. I said, so here is the thing. For $500, I can't represent you. Now, if you want me to represent you with this builder, then what we're going to do is we'll have another contract later on that says that I will be compensated partly by you and partly by the builder, okay? And so I throw it out there. These are all sort of subliminal things that I talk about, but I don't get to it. So when you bring out the BRNN, which really isn't for compensation, then they can revoke it at any time, right? They're so darn happy with me, you know, they don't have to do the big bad one. So that's how I go about it. So that's just a little bit thing too. Okay, you know, explain how your business works, like we talked about it, explain your commitment to them. I tell everybody, look, you're going to get 200% out of me. Other people you may not, but when I take on a buyer, I'm absolutely dedicated to making sure that you find the right property. And one of the things I use with my buyers is I always say, look, I am not going to sell you a house. When I got in this business, I was trained that you showed them 3 houses, you put them in the conference room, and they came out with a contract. And I said, that's not the way I do business. So I said, what I do is I'm going to show you enough property, I'm going to give you enough information that when you find a house that you think you want to purchase, you're going to have enough information that you can make the correct decision for yourselves. So I tell them, I'm the one that's going to help you make the decision. I try to get away from the selling aspect of it. Try to get them, you know, and always use the assumptive we when we find a house, things like that. Okay, so we have the 3 different contracts that we're going to talk about. Now, the BRNN is the buyer realtor non-exclusive, not for compensation. It's required with all SBBI transactions. Why? Well, let's go back to the history of how we got to buyer-broker agreements. You know, back about 1985, when the agency laws came down, which is the Civil Code 2079, which just tells you, you know, that we have to be loyal and confidential and all those things, and we have to do our due diligence and our inspections and things like that. That's all in the Civil Code. At that point in time, the feeling was in the law that everything was great, and we had the agency down, and then all of a sudden we got the Eastern versus Strasburger case, which is the case where we got the transfer disclosure statement. And in the transfer disclosure statement, one of the things that your association, the California Association of Realtors, did for you is we put in that legislation that there would be a statute of limitations, which was 2 years. So anything that happened after 2 years that would, in regards to a disclosure issue or things like that, would have a time that it could only toll, which was a great help to us because otherwise you have people coming back 20, 30, 40 years, things like that. That was great, everything was great. And then we found out when a court case came down, which was called Fields versus Century 21, that court case basically held that all those laws applied to the selling agent, but not to the listing agent, I'm sorry, but not to the representative of the buyer. So it was a big panic in the streets, and that's where we got to buyer broker. Okay, so your BRNN, broker realtor, the non-exclusive, not for compensation, the biggest thing it does is it protects you. It protects you because it gives you a statute of limitations. It also protects you on your agency. You should have done your agency before you do any contract, but just in case you forgot, it also says that it will accept you. They will accept dual agency if it's required. So you have the dual agency side and you have the protection side on that.
How long is the statute of limitations?
2 years. 2 years. Okay.
With
So
the BRNN. Yes.
that's with the BRNN.
Without it, it's 3, isn't it?
If without it, no. Without it can go on forever.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So that's why we use it on the buyer's side, okay? So think about this, and this is why South Bay Brokers, which I've always been proud of the fact that we're ahead of the curve, I think, as far as protecting our agents. Using the BRNN is really your protection. So it's extremely important that you understand that you're doing it not just for your buyers, but you're doing it for yourself. You know, it's not going to guarantee you get paid, but it's definitely going to protect you. So the way I explain to them is that under the terms of a true agency agreement, I have to have utmost loyalty, confidentiality, honesty, fair and truthful dealings, right? If you take that to the far extent of the law, it says I could only work with one buyer at a time. Is that practical? I say that to my buyers. Is that practical? No. I could only work with one seller at a time. Is that practical? No. So we have these representations agreements that we'll go through and look at it, but it tells the buyer, puts the buyer on notice that there's certain things that you're going to be able to do as an agent in order for you to keep your business the way it is. And again, remember that the BRNN has the BIA, the Buyer's Investigation in it to it, which is a great tutorial. So you go through the contract with them, then you go through the BIA. They have a good thing to take home and hold in their hand and read, and I give that to them as their homework. You need to understand that. And again, if they won't sign, if they signed your agency but they won't sign the BRNN, I always ask myself why, okay? Now, I don't have a hard and fast about the BRNN at my initial meeting. The only thing I do say to them is, before we show property, before we see property together, I will have a signed BRNN. And if they don't do it, that's it. I just don't show property. Okay? That may sound tough, but that's the way I do it. Because, first of all, I'm going to be in trouble with South Bay Brokers, because I'm a working agent just like you are. I'm going to be in trouble with South Bay Brokers if I don't have it. And if they're not going to sign it now, do you think they're going to sign it when you get ready to sign your contracts? No. So let's get, just go on and make sure you know that. Okay. The Buyer Realtor Exclusive Agreement, known as the BRE. Now this is the one we use to get paid. Okay, this is the only one that gets you paid and protects that pay. Okay, there's another one we'll talk about in just a moment. But this one, you can use it for sale by owners, you can use it for new construction, when you're looking for unlisted properties. And that, like I said, I explain to them as I'm going through all this just chatter about why we might use this sometimes, so that when I get to it, I can say to them, okay, Mr. Buyer, we're going to see 4 properties today, and there's one where, quite frankly, and it could be an alternative broker situation or something like that, I tell them, quite frankly, the commissions being offered to me as your agent is not going to fit into my business plan, because I have a certain amount of money that I need to make in order for me to be profitable and to be able to do a good job for you. So in this case, since they're only going to pay 1 apple, and I'm really looking for another 2 apples, if you'll agree to pay me the 2 apples, and then they'll pay me the 1 apple, then we'll be able to work together. I also explained to them that the first thing I'm going to do before I present that offer is that I'm going to go to the other side and say, look, I have a good offer for you. Are you willing to accept, to review our offer based on the 3 apples rather than the 1 apple? And lots of times we know in this office we've had pretty good of being able to get the other side to agree to pay the commission. Remember also that the BRE and the BRNE, both of these say that whatever you're compensated by the seller or another side will be deducted from what the buyer will owe you. So they're protected. They're not going to get double dipped or something like that. Okay, and so again, think of the BRE as your listing agreement, but it's your buyers. This is an exclusive listing agreement with these buyers. even if they go out and find a for sale by owner, another property with another agent, you have the contractual grounds to be paid. Okay? And the courts are looking very favorably now on the exclusive agreements. Okay, so the exclusive agreement, very important. Okay, so how do we do buyer brokerage? We do the agency first. We always explain that it's not a contract. Agency is a disclosure. And if they won't do the agency, say it's been really nice meeting you and lead. Okay, when they do the agency, after doing my agency, I lead into the BRNN. I use the BIA, which is attached to it as a teaching aid. Sometimes you might feel more comfortable to go right to the BIA, which is at the back, and it talks about what the broker's going to do, what the buyer's going to do, their responsibilities, your responsibilities. And if they're really not comfortable with the BRNN with me, I just tell them, that's fine, I want you to take it home and read it, think of it as your homework, but we'll need to return it to me signed before we go out and show property. Okay? And I have never had a problem with that. Okay, so all of these contracts are the same in a few different ways, and then some of them are different. We're going to go through that. Okay, first of all, the BRNN, the BRE, and the BRNE, they define the scope and tasks and duties to be performed by the buyer and broker. One of the reasons you want to go over these things in the contract with them, which we'll get to, is because you need to manage your buyer's expectations. If they think that you're going to be doing the loan, the everything, the escrow, the whatever, they need to understand where things are going to break off. And the way I explain it to them is I say, look, I'm going to help you find enough information to make a good decision, but when we get to escrow, there's going to be part of my team that's going to be helping you. And those are going to be people like my title officer. When we have a title question, we're going to call the title officer. And the title officer is going to talk to you about it because that's not my area of expertise. That's their area of expertise. Same thing with escrow questions, same thing with mortgage questions, same thing when we get to inspections. One of the things that too many realtors I find take on themselves is that you want to be so helpful that you take on all this liability because you don't give your liability out to the third parties. Okay, your third party vendors are the ones we should be working on from a risk management viewpoint. Okay, so don't interpret the title report for them. Don't interpret what the escrow instructions say. Put those back to the people that are really in charge there. Okay, the other thing that's very important, like I said, is you have a written consent to dual agency. Now you're going to have a written consent to dual agency, but I want you to make sure that you do it first before you get this. And then the third thing, which is very, very important for us, is it creates the contractual limit on the time a buyer has to bring a legal claim against the broker. Really important, because you don't want to have a lawsuit 4 or 5 years from now. Okay, so BRN, realtor, BRN, non-exclusive, not for compensation. This is what I call the non-threatening one. Okay, so it's an agreement between the potential buyer of real property and a real estate broker. Again, it defines the scope and tasks of the duties for the buyer and the broker. It provides the consent to the dual agency if it develops, and it places a limit on the time that the legal action can be brought against the broker. Remember that you can explain to them that this form can be revoked at any time. And if they're really twitchy about it, just take it for a day. I've taken it for a day. I've been very specific about the properties they want to see. I get them to sign the BRNN just for those specific properties. Sometimes you can just get around that. So, it's going to expire tomorrow or something like that. I mean, if you get into a situation, I know there's these situations where somebody wants to see another property, they've called you about it or whatever. I still try to get through this as much as I can, but I have done that in the past where I'll just take it for a certain period of time or something like that.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So where do you list the properties that you're going to show them before on that?
Right on there.
Right on
Yeah,
there.
if you run out of space, you're going to have to put an addendum. You're going to say, see addendum, you're going to show them what you're showing them. Yeah. Okay? But remember, it can be revoked by anybody. This is important. Because when you find out you've got a buyer you don't want to work with, you can also revoke it. What's your question?
Revoking it, just you have to email them, you have to, how do you revoke it?
If I've done my agency, I'm going to revoke my agency. And there's a form for that. And I'm just going to, I'm probably going to email it and send it by letter. Okay. I also tell them, I don't just cut them loose. I usually just say, this isn't working out for me, and I think maybe you'd be happier with somebody else, so maybe I'll foist you off on Allison. I can say that, 'cause
Doesn't it
we had a
say-
good transaction.
Doesn't it say revocable by writing too? Like
Yeah,
when
yeah,
one of
it's
them
written,
was like-
yeah, well, just remember,